Welcome everyone to the 2nd of June open house drop-in. This is the first one that we're doing this year. I'm really excited. It is very kind of last minute and chaotic, as these things always are. But I hope it is going to be a lot of fun. They always have been in the past. So strap in and we're going to get started. So my name is Danielle Benzon, as you may have noticed. I am your host for today. And I am a voice and speaking coach. I work online. I am mostly based in Vancouver, but I'm currently in South Africa visiting family and in this basement in the dark. And I work with speakers who want to communicate more effectively. So that might be in the boardroom, feeling really confident about speaking up, or on a Zoom call, feeling good about, saying your bit. Or it could be doing a TED Talk, getting your lines perfect, getting the storytelling nuances, getting over those nerves, or it could just be answering the phone in a voice that you like. I have done that too. So I work with a wide variety of speakers in a wide variety of areas, but what I do primarily is the voice body instrument. So I come from a background as an actor, as a classical actor. So it's not about writing the perfect script. Because let's be honest, if you write the perfect script and no one's listening, doesn't matter. So I focus more on the physicality, on charisma, on being present with your audience, making eye contact with them, getting over your nerves, feeling comfortable on camera and on stage and in the boardroom and answering the phone. That's what I do and help people with. So it's things like breath support, resonance, articulation, projection, that kind of thing. And I am hoping to host these once every couple of months. This is a free event, so anyone who wants to join can. There should be a link in the chat, and actually my wonderful assistant can throw a link on the Facebook group as well. If anyone wants to join us, you can put a link to the Zoom call in the Facebook group, because we are live streamed in the Facebook group. And the idea is I want to create a space for people to practice and get feedback, because as speakers, especially as professional speakers, we are often speaking in front of people in a very professional setting, or in our basements at home by ourselves. And there isn't much in between. And so the idea is that this is a place where you can practice. This is a place where you can play around a little bit and get feedback in a reasonably safe setting. I mean, it is public, but we're very nice here, or at least I try to be. So we're going to alternate between speakers and Q&A. And is there anything else I need to say before we get started? Oh, I did want to say one thing before we do introductions. People are kind of dripping in as we get started. So before we do introductions, we get a few more people on the call. I did just want to talk about camera angles, because if you're speaking, you're going to be on camera. You might want to know a little bit about how to look your best. The idea is, if possible, you want your camera to be eye level and just a little bit up. So you don't want your camera to be below you. We don't want any of these kind of up your nose kind of shots. But we don't want your camera to be too high above you either, because that kind of looks like we're looking down on you, down the well. So you want your camera to be eye level plus a centimeter, or plus a tiny little bit. Ideally, as you can see in my frame, ideally I like to be able to see people's elbows, because that means that I can see their hands when they're talking. If you're in a closer shot like this, there's nothing wrong with that, but it means that your gestures are going to be severely limited and you're not going to be able to get any feedback on that. So if possible, if you can go back a little bit so we can at least see your elbows. Your hands don't need to be in frame all the time, but if we can see your elbows, then that kind of allows your hands to come in and out of frame without it looking very strange. The other thing that I wanted to say about composition is you want to be taking up most of your frame vertically. You can't take up most of the frame vertically and horizontally. Humans aren't shaped that way, but vertically, most of your frame you want to be taking up. So your eyes should be at about 1/3 of your frame. So if we're taking 1/3 down and then there's another third, you want your eyes to always be at about the third level. And that's actually true for however close or far away you are. 1/3 is a really good place for your eyes to be. So that helps you to feel body posture wise on camera that you are being assertive. You're taking up the frame. You're not this tiny little person at the bottom of the frame who's kind of not really wanting to be here, but you're also not too close and intimidating people. So that is the ideal kind of space where we're at today. We have one person on our call. Hi, Steve. Nice to
Hello.
see you.
Hello. Hi, Daniel. Doing well, thank you. It's been such a long time. Yes.
It's been forever. It's lovely to see you. So
would you like to introduce
yourself? I'll get people to introduce themselves as they come in.
Sure. My name is Steve Malachek. I'm trying to, well, first of all, I'm a very technical person by background professionally. I come from a background in the oil and gas industry as a geoscientist, geologist, engineer, that type of profession. But in recent years, I've been working with nonprofit organizations with water and agricultural projects in Southern Africa specifically. And my current sort of effort is to sell myself or to market myself as a consultant more commercially with corporations. There's been a recent trend among the including in the oil and gas industry, to become much more environmentally conscious. And this whole area is called environmental, social, and governance, ESG. And I've sort of been in both worlds for a while, both in the corporate environment as well as now most recently in the nonprofit environment. And so I'm trying to really position myself to get back in the corporate environment for that more particular purpose of sustainability and being able to demonstrate some that I can apply both areas of experience. And the key thing, I generally don't have a lot of difficulty with trying to communicate technical things, but what you were just speaking of, Danielle, is exactly what I've sort of lost any sense of awareness about doing, with the camera presence, the energy, the charisma, the other attributes of really becoming an effective speaker. You know, I'm in Toastmasters, and what I've observed there is really the effective speakers demonstrate these qualities. They can have a very informative and substantive talk, but if it lacks these other skills of being able to be expressive, open, genuine, authentic, and grounded, and all the other things that I've really lost. At one point, I felt like I was really a little bit on board with that, but I've really lost it. And it takes practice. I know that. And without some sense of regular appearances on a camera and somebody observing these things, it's very easy for that all to sort of slip away. And so I'm very pleased that this has been reactivated, and there are future opportunities to get some feedback, some critical feedback on those other skills. So that's where I'm at. And really, again, my biggest thing is really, I think the biggest need right now is to give an effective elevator pitch. And I know you've given sessions on that as well. So
yes. Oh, that's so fun.
And the elevator pitch that actually demonstrate these other skills as well. So yes, one could have a tape recorder playing, telling what kind of wonderful things, your qualifications and this type of thing, but really.
I believe that's called a resume.
That's called a resume, yes, or a bio or some other, a document that basically gives a laundry list of all the wonderful things that you've done and how qualified you are and all that. But dealing with human beings, there's more to it than that. So that's my challenge at the moment, is I'm trying to market myself in a slightly different way than just being sort of a useful or helpful or to nonprofit organizations. That's been a very interesting experience, but I'm trying to revert back into the corporate world and be a little bit more business-like in that type of application. So
super. Yeah, I'm really glad you're here, Steve. It's been ages since I've seen you. Oh, it's been ages since I've seen anyone.
Yeah, no, everything looks great there. Yeah.
Thanks. Took a while to set up. But I also just want to say, if anyone is watching this and going, oh, I'd love to join, make sure that you do click the Zoom link. You just need to register through Zoom to join us on Zoom, because we're live streaming to Facebook, but we are live on Zoom. So if you'd like to join us, please do. It's always so exciting. I love all the different careers that come onto these open houses. I'm just one little piece of them. All these really interesting careers come in. So I'm very glad you're here, Sue. Thanks so much. And you're right about the practice. Absolutely. And I've been feeling it too, because, you know, with the move and taking practice, I've been feeling myself getting rusty. And it is one of those things where you got to keep practicing, and you got to get back on the bike after you get off of it. We do. We all get rusty. And it isn't enough just to say all the right words, because that would be a piece of paper that said everything perfectly. This is a human medium. Even if we're, you know, on camera or even on the phone, you can hear it when someone's smiling, right? You can hear their vocal energy. So I'm very glad you're here. One introduction we haven't done yet, and I don't want to put her on the spot, but I have a wonderful assistant here, Wambui. She's from Kenya, and she is helping me out. She's been absolutely amazing setting all this stuff up. You don't have to come on camera, but did you want to just say hi? Silence. Wambui, do you want to say hello? She's like, no.
No, my apologies for that. So, hi everyone. My name is Wambui. I am Danielle's virtual assistant. I'm currently in Kenya. So it has been an honor working with her, and you know, you learn so much. So I hope we all get to learn today, and all of you get to join us. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. I did just want you to introduce yourself, because I know summer's coming up and you've got some extra time for some extra work. So if anyone's looking for a virtual assistant, I can personally recommend Wambui. I don't have enough time for her to work 60 hours a week, but if you want to take her for a spin for a few months, please do. This is my water bottle. It is not brandy. It is water. If you see me swinging from this, I just really don't like drinking from plastic. Steve's like, no, it's as the day goes on. Great. So I think if we are ready, we can just get started. So what I like to do with these open houses is I like to do Q&A and then a speaker, and then Q&A and then a speaker. I've been talking for quite a bit already. So Steve, if you're ready to jump in as our first speaker.
Okay, I didn't have a lot prepared. I could do it one of two ways. I've got, I could give you this more, try to give my elevator pitch, which is not very, I'm still struggling with it, quite frankly. The other thing that I've got going on this weekend, my wife has got a birthday, and we're having I don't think she can hear me, we're having a surprise birthday party for her. And so I'm giving, No, she's not in the house even at the moment. So I'm giving a speech. We've got about 30 guests that will be there. And so I'm going to give this speech that Happy is not barking, so they may be home actually. But I'm giving this speech that is kind of meant to be a lighthearted speech that talks about her birthday and some things about her background and so forth in a humorous way. And I'm still working on that speech. I don't know which way to go with something that really could be useful in my career.
Which would you prefer? We're going to be doing this again. So
yeah. By the way,
we have a practice lab coming up actually tomorrow. So if you want
I was wondering. Thank you for mentioning that. I wanted to just sort of reconnect today and just find out a little bit about what the situation was and so forth. So you do have a practice lab tomorrow, is that right?
Yeah, I have a practice lab coming up tomorrow. So just anyone else who's on the call or watching later, my portal members, I have an online membership portal, and anyone who's a member of the portal can come to practice labs, which are a little bit like this. They're a bit more formal, they're a bit longer, and there's much more intense feedback, of course. So yeah, why don't you bring the networking pitch to practice lab?
I think I'll do that. I'm I need to get my thoughts together a little bit more. I wasn't all that prepared for this particular one. By the way, I really enjoy the little tutorials that you've been sending out. The one on, I believe, one on charisma. The other, the more recent. Am I correct on that? The most recent one being networking, and then the most recent one on watching yourself on video, which is a terrifying experience, of course, for people to do. So maybe if you want to progress on with a little bit more of the program, I might work up enough to give it a go here in a short bit, but I'll just sort of stand by for the moment.
You've been saved by David coming on. I'm going to get him to introduce himself. So you get.
Okay. All right.
Think about it. Also, I do just want to say, and actually, Wambui, if you can throw the link for the mailing list in the chat and possibly on the Facebook group as well. So what Steve was referring to is I have a mailing list where I send out content. So it's not a promotional mailing list. It's a content-based mailing list. Every week I send out a speaking tip. So far there's been one on how to do an effective networking pitch. There's been one on how to build your charisma. There's been one on how to watch yourself on video because you have to measure yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we do it? Because it's so painful, so I have a whole bunch of those things going out every week. So if you are interested in some free content, just sign up for the mailing list. Sorry, Steve, you want to give a...
No, that was very good. Thanks for sending those out. It brings back some important skills that I've at least, raises my awareness on doing that. And so I very much appreciate those. Very nicely done. The YouTubes as well. Yeah, the YouTube in particular. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps you stay on the bike because it is.
It does. Yeah. I mean, because as you know, I'm in Toastmasters, and those skills, it focuses on something else. But what you're talking about is really this whole body, voice instrument type of thing, and the physicality of speaking. That it isn't just head up, and that's what I tend to. Mm-hmm. That's something that I can probably feel pretty comfortable with, but it's really feeling connected with the audience and feeling like you're really putting your whole self into it. I'm still struggling with that.
Strategy is so easy, the intellectual stuff is so easy to teach. So most people who teach speaking, they teach the strategy part because it's the easiest part. How to structure your talk. I mean, not that it's not useful; it's extremely useful. It's very important. But there's this glaringly obvious hole where not a lot of people are talking about how to connect with the audience, not how to deal with your nerves, that kind of thing. In a physical, they say, do it, but they don't really tell you how. That is definitely my little niche of the market here.
Yeah, no, that's been perfect. Mm-hmm.
Thanks so much, Steve. David, you are here.
Sure.
Hello.
Hello. I just made a comment to you. Your audio seems very low. I can't seem to. I can hear Steve really good, but you're really low.
Yeah. How about this? Can you hear me now?
It's better.
Is that better? Is that better?
Steve is coming really good. Hi, Steve. Long time no see.
Hi, David. Yeah, good to see you again as well, David. Wonderful.
Yeah. I had a hard time getting my link to come here. I had to sort of look around for it. I got it anyway. Oh yeah. I'm all confused today.
So what we're doing is we're just kind of doing the introduction still. Haven't started any speaker spots yet, but just getting as people filter in, just getting them to introduce themselves and say why they're here. So David, do you want to let us know why you're here and what you're looking to get out of today?
Okay. Well, this is my first open house for a long time. We're used to the labs, and I prepare for those, have scripts and all kinds of stuff going. But today I don't, and totally confused. But I do have, I could just talk all week. And you're helping me a lot with that because I'm opening my mouth now and I'm enunciating, and I feel better about that. So this has been great, and that's one of the things I was looking for, because becoming a speaker, you have to be able to make yourself heard, and you have to be able to. I tended to mumble, and I couldn't, that's so it was terrible. So now, even when I talk to my wife, I open my mouth, she goes, "Oh, who's this talking to me?" So it's been great, and I really appreciate what you're doing. You really look different today. You're not sitting in your attic anymore.
No, I'm not in my attic today. I'm in my downstairs office. I have two spots where I work.
Lighting's good. Everything looks great. Yeah.
Yeah. This one is it's down some very slick stairs. So if it's raining, I don't do it. I don't come down here. But it is nicer. There's more space and there's more lights, and I can make more noise. So
looks great. Looks great.
Thank you so much. Super. Excuse me. So I believe both Steve and David have signed up to be speakers. Excuse me, I'm getting over a cold. So who wants to go first?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Sorry, who wants to go first?
Oh, I can go first. Tell you the one.
You want to go first?
How long have I got? I mean, how long have I got here?
You got 5 minutes only. So this is
Okay.
unlike Practice
That's
Lab,
good
which
because
is
I'm gonna make it short.
behind the paywall. This is for the public, and you never know who's going to show up. So I limit it to 5 minutes. And before we start, would you like feedback first off?
Yeah, just the usual. I that make sure that I'm clear. You can understand what I'm trying to say because I'm opening my mouth.
Excellent.
And
We're still
and
working on articulation clarity.
articulation, yes, articulation is what I'm all about right now.
Excellent.
And
what are you going to share with us today?
I'm going to share some comments I did to a video that a very long-term researcher in biology had posted in a YouTube video, and there are tons of comments on there. And I posted just one or two of them, but and this one guy responded and said, "Oh, it sounds really interesting," because I mentioned my book. He said, "When's your book published? When you gotta get it up?" So, so I thought that's a vote of confidence, So I guess I made somebody make sense. It sounded. So anyway.
Are you talking about your book or?
Yeah, well, and here I'm really talking about my comments as to that thing. It was the video was about what is life, and of course this guy's a scientist, and so I go on to about how that's problematic.
Okay, great. So you're going to have 5 minutes. We're all going to be muted, so you're going to have the stage for 5 minutes. I will let you know when your time is up.
If it's less than 5 minutes, I'll just stop. How's that?
Then you just stop. That's not a problem at all. If it gets to 5 minutes and I have to stop you, I will stop you.
Okay.
And then I'll give you feedback afterwards on clarity and articulation. So
is the audio okay? Can you hear me okay? Audio's good?
Okay. Great.
Okay, there was a video on YouTube about the meaning of life, and it was posted by this guy, Mr. Nurse. He's Mr. Nurse is a researcher, a very qualified researcher on biology. And of course, he was looking at the ingredients and of life and what we call life, because the microbes and things like that. And another guy had posted something. I don't know if I can find it here now. Let me see where it went. Okay. I can't do that. Okay, so anyway, and I got back to him and I said, I totally agree with you. Mr. Nurse is simply talking about life as it is expressed in an organism. To get to a more basic level, I see life as an energy that is more like a transparent fluid, one that supports everything that we call living thing, including ourselves. Our head brain cannot perceive it by itself because it's just a thinking brain, not a feeling one. But our extra brain located in our gut is different. It's a brain that is not designed to think anything, but to feel everything. When both these brains are optimized together, there is a way that we can get closer to perceiving life when it is acting to support our hard-fought efforts to succeed despite all odds. It is at times of great need when this energy is most pervasive, although fleeting. And another chap commented on that, and I commented, I think you're onto something here. If our level of perception appears limited, then what we are able to see as if we stretched it. Consider this. What if life exists and always has existed in the ethereal plane? The reason science is somewhat hobbled is that I cannot go outside the lines of the physical. But how is it that we humans can? In fleeting moments of great need, we call up the strength of our endurance we use to label as our persistence, but now we call our grit, to achieve a success against all odds. Such things happen every day. The energy that backs this kind of phenomena is usually felt with such force that it blanks out our lack of self-belief for a few microseconds so we can move forward without fear. Every book on success talks about it, but no one is isolated to the length of time needed so we can perceive and study it. But now that's changing. Did you know that humans have a second brain? located in the gut, the furthest from the head as it could possibly be. It's not a thinking, but a feeling brain. It fills the important gap of thinking brain feels nothing. I'm writing a book about this that has taken me 40 years to understand. And I'm telling you that life is ethereal, and that has backed every thought success you've ever had. And now I have the mechanism to prove it. And
excellent. That was, oh, you know what? I didn't press go on the timer, so I have no idea how long that was. But it was approximately 5 minutes. I set the timer up and then I forgot to press go.
Was it a bit long? Was it a bit long?
No, I think it was perfect.
Okay.
I think it was about 5 minutes, but
Okay.
the buzzer didn't go because I forgot to press go on the buzzer.
Oh.
So how did that feel, David?
Well, yeah, it's a bit better than it used to be. I kind of felt at one point I was rushing a little bit, like you said. Take a breath. I keep forgetting, and I remember that now. When I'm reading that, I should have maybe slowed down a little bit. I was concerned about time and all that, but anyway, it was better.
Yeah, that's such a common issue that we have as speakers. We're so aware of how much time we have, and we want to speed up so that we can fit into the time. But then, of course, if we speed up too much, then our speech gets muddy and no one hears what we say anyway. So it's always better to say one thing clearly than to say 3 things in a hurry.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, that's very important.
If you get cut off, and if you do go over the 5 minutes and you get cut off, it's still better to go slow, because anyone who's interested, because they could hear you and they were listening, they can follow up with you afterwards and say, oh, what was that thing you were going to say? And that's actually sometimes quite nice, because they could turn into leads, they could turn into book sales. Whereas if you say everything you need to say and you're like, oh, I'm done, and they weren't really listening, they have no reason to follow up with you as well.
Yeah.
So even if you don't finish, it's still better to take your time and really enjoy speaking, because you want people to hook in to what you're saying. So yeah, I hear that. I hear it. I feel it. I did a speech recently that was 30 minutes instead of my normal 45 minutes, and I did the same thing. So I hear that. I know the feeling. But it's a very strong temptation that we have to fight, because we have to stay present. We have to stay present with what we're saying and with our audience as well. One thing that you didn't ask for feedback on, but I'm going to tell you anyway, is you weren't making eye contact with the camera, even when you weren't reading. You were looking, I think, probably at our faces.
Right, I was.
Zoom.
Yeah.
And that's something very important to remember as speakers in an online world. When I'm looking you in the eyes, I feel like I'm making eye contact, but you don't. So I, as a speaker, I have to look at the lens. And it's horrible and it's uncomfortable, because I can't see your face and I can't see your eyes. I can't see your facial expressions. But that's how I be generous as a speaker, and I give you my eyes. When I'm listening, I'll look at you, because then I want to absorb your facial expressions. But when I'm speaking, it's very important to look at the lens.
That's a good one. I'll have to make a note of that.
That's for everyone. So for you specifically, I had noticed that you are moving your jaw more. I know we've been working on this in practice labs, so fantastic. I can hear your voice coming out of your mouth more. I can see your jaw moving more. It's getting more relaxed. It's wonderful to hear. For anyone who doesn't know kind of voice technique, the vowels, when we open our jaw and we let the vowels out, that is what allows our voice to be louder. That's what allows for projection, for carry, for volume. The consonants, the T's and the D's and the S's and the B's and the F's, those are what take that sound and make meaning out of it. So we need these lovely open vowels so that our voice can carry, but then we also need the consonants to break up the vowels into little meaning packages called words, and so that we can understand people clearly. So that's the next step for you, David, is we're going to start working on the vowels a bit more. I mean, on the consonants a bit more. You've got lovely you're opening your mouth a lot more. We did speak last time briefly about S's. Your S is quite wide and it can get splashy. So especially on the word success, your success, it kind of sounds like your your tongue is wider and further forward. It's kind of touching your teeth. So ideally, you want your tongue to be thinner and in the center of your mouth and not touching anything. So if my tongue is wide and splashy, success sounds like that. But if my tongue is more precise, smaller in the middle of the mouth, success sounds like that. And so we don't want your tongue to be touching anything. If you can feel your tongue touching your teeth, you want to make it more skinny, more narrow. And that will take practice. Success is a good word, though, for you, because it's got the C, the hard C, and the S right next to each other. So you've got that K and the S right next to each other, which is, it's a nice combination to check, because it's a tricky combination to do. So the word success is a good one for you to play with. The other thing that I noticed, the next most obvious consonant for you is your T. So T and D are created in the same way, but especially in the North American accent, we'll often slide over a T. So we'll say totally instead of totally. Now, this is one of those things where it's an accent thing, but if you're having trouble having people hear you anyway, it's always better to go a little bit further into more precise language. So even if everyone around you says totally, if you want to be heard a little bit better, then totally is the better way to say it, because you're really hitting that T. Now, T's and D's are made in the same way, but not everyone makes them in the same way. So what you can do to practice, and it's usually the T that's wrong. The D's are usually fine. D is it's an easy sound to make, right? So what I like to get people to do, to test it, is to say 5 D's and then a T, and then see if your mouth moves at all, because it shouldn't. It should be exactly the same. The T just has no voice and the D has voice. So you go d, 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 t. And if you go d, 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 t, then you know you're doing it wrong. Because then what happens is your tongue is kind of flapping a little bit at the end of the T. So with me, why don't we do this? D, 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 d.
Da, 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 da. Like that?
And then one without the voice.
Sorry?
And then one without the voice for the T. So 5 D's and then a T.
Oh. Da, 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 T. T.
So you want to say it exactly the same way as you do the D.
Oh,
so
okay.
Da, 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 t. Can you do that?
Da, 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 da.
Yes, good, excellent. So
yeah, I can see now. Yeah.
It's a silly little thing to practice. I do my my consonants in the shower because you know I can sing and do my consonants in the shower. It's a nice way to remember to do it. The T's can get splashy. There's also a lovely tongue twister which is on the resource library in the portal, which you have access to the membership portal because you're a member. In the resource library, check out the tongue twisters, specifically what a to do, to die, today, at, a minute or two to two. And things like at, it's not at, it's at a minute or two to two. And hit all of the T's, the T in the middle of minute and so forth. And I would even underline them, make sure you're actually hitting them all. That's quite a fun tongue twister to do. It's quite a long one. That'll help you with your T's. So keep those S's skinny and D your T's.
D or sorry, I missed that.
D your T's. So make your T's in the same way as you do. There's, I think, I have an article on the website as well. I'll make sure I send it to you. That that explains it a little bit more clearly. So I'll send you the article. I'll make a note.
Okay.
Please. To David. Actually, I'll send it with the follow-up. If anyone who's registered for the call, I'll send it with the follow-ups.
I had this stuck on my printer here. You know,
yes!
He thrusts his fists against the posts and still insists he sees the ghost.
Very good.
That's my shower one.
Could you hear when you said ghost? I didn't hear the st.
Oh yeah.
So you got to really slow it down.
Ghost. Yeah. You can exaggerate that when you're saying it, right? Because you're not using it in language, right? Yeah.
Pull it apart, because the really difficult thing about pronunciation is that it's an extremely fine motor skill, what we're doing. You know, we talk all day, so we don't think about it, but this is the finest motor skill that you have. There's a huge part of your brain dedicated entirely to the motor skill of language. So it's not an easy thing to do. And when we're relearning something, you have to retrain your muscles. So pulling it apart, and it sounds silly, but going thrust until you can go thrusts in a way that you can hear the STS. That's the only way to do it, I'm afraid. You got to pull it. You got to take the machine apart, clean it up, and put the machine back together. It's the only way.
I love it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David.
The other thing I noticed, I don't know if you noticed, the breathing. I tend to do that. I run too long on the same amount of air without taking more air in, and that's something you were talking about one time there. But the breathing exercise, I forget what you call it.
Yes.
The breathing thing.
Yeah, that's a really good one. So actually, perfect. I'll segue into. I forgot to take you off speaker. Sorry. I'll segue into the Q&A part because we just did a speaker. I'll do that as the question because that's a really good question.
Yeah.
So for so many of us, how do we slow down? How do we separate our ideas? How do we bring vocal variety into our speech? And the answer is to breathe more often.
Yeah.
Most of us, we're kind of taught to read out loud, or we're doing choral verse or poetry or something, and we're taught to, you know, you have to breathe on the comma or you have to breathe on the period, which is garbage. I mean, it's very useful if you're speaking with a whole group of people, then you have to do it. But when you're speaking on your own, you don't. You can breathe wherever you like. And ideally, you want to breathe with every idea, because each idea should have its own life. It should have its own vocal tone. You don't want to spread the same amount of life, the same amount of energy over multiple ideas.
Oh, good idea.
Idea to have its own.
So sort of package
really
it.
Helps.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this really helps with parsing, like breaking up the structure of a sentence as well. We do this in Shakespeare a lot. We practice this as actors because he's got these long, rambly sentences with subclauses and clauses with subclauses, and you know, and it can get really complicated. And if you try to do it all on one breath, it's impossible.
It's like running out of gas. Yeah.
Well, you can do it physically, but it's impossible to understand because you're not breaking it up. So a really silly example, I won't bring Shakespeare in today. I'll do a very pedestrian example. For example, I can do on one breath, I went to the grocery store and I bought tomatoes, potatoes, and avocados, and I saw my friend Jill, and she'd just been to Hawaii and she said it was great. Now that's one sentence. I can do it all on one breath, but it sounds quite monotone. It sounds, you know, all the same, because I'm not letting myself think of each idea as its own separate thing. But if I break the sentence down grammatically and I breathe every time there's a new idea, I went to the grocery store, I bought potatoes and tomatoes and avocados, and I saw my friend Jill, and she's just been to Hawaii and she said it was great. Now that extra life isn't me kind of pushing extra life into it. It's because I'm giving myself the time to think, what am I going to say next? Now, you don't have to separate the avocados and potatoes and tomatoes. We don't want to, but it's fun.
Yeah. Do they put that in the script sometime when you're writing a script? You put space, they might say air or something in there, or at least break up the paragraphs.
Typically it's a comma. I mean, that's usually what a comma will mean.
Okay.
But we don't always, if you were a voice actor, for example, you would be marking your own script. So you see the grammar that's written there, but the person who's writing it isn't necessarily thinking of it being spoken. Mm-hmm. Even if they're writing a script to be spoken, we're not always conscious of that. So when I'm taking a script and I'm going to do like a voiceover, 30-second commercial voiceover, I will take my pencil and I will draw a line every time I want to breathe. Every time I think it makes sense to breathe. And I will separate the ideas. And there may not be a comma there, but I'm going to separate the ideas. I'm going to go, this idea needs its own breath, its own energy. This idea needs its own breath. There's lots of different ways you can mark up a script. That's a whole other science. But the more you can think of, every 3 to 5 words, you have a new idea. So for example, you were saying, I have this book that I've written. It's taken me 40 years to understand, and it's about the second brain. That's 3 ideas. So you don't want to say, I have this book that I've written. It's taken me 40 years to understand, and it's about the gut brain. Say, I have this book that I've written. It's taken me about 40 years to understand, and the book is about the gut brain. Now that feels like a lot of breath because you're not used to breathing that often. It doesn't need to be a full breath. It doesn't need to be a big breath every time.
Okay.
But allowing yourself to refuel.
Yep.
Kind of like, a race car, when it does a pit stop, it doesn't wait till it's falling apart to do the pit stop. It does the pit stop before it falls apart so that it can keep going. Same idea. When you're breathing, you don't wait to be completely out of breath. You let the old breath out, you let a new breath in because this is a new energy. And it doesn't need to be a full breath either. Is that helpful,
Okay.
David?
Yeah. Okay. So you can just take a quick one just through your nose, kind of just a quick kind of a, or what?
No. I would never breathe through my nose when I'm speaking.
Okay.
Ever. Because it's slower, it's noisier,
Yeah.
and you don't get very much in. Always breathe through your mouth. It's more emotionally available, it's faster, and it doesn't make a sound. So it's silent and it's fast. So breathe through your mouth always. Don't let it be a little top-up breath. So there's a difference between filling your entire breath capacity and letting the breath move all the way down into your body. So I can take a small breath that goes all the way down into my belly. Or I can take a big breath that completely fills me up, but also goes all the way down to my belly. I don't want to take a small breath just into my shoulders.
Okay.
Because that's going to encourage you to disconnect from your body. It's going to encourage you to disconnect from your energy. You're going to get more and more tense as you speak. You're going to speed up.
Yeah.
And you're going to disconnect from your content. So
I
always
noticed that.
breathe all the way down, but it doesn't need to be a huge breath. It can be a little one.
Okay. Because I noticed at the end of it all, I had some tension in my diaphragm, as if I was holding my breath, that terrible. And it kind of creates a type of anxiety. I'm out of breath here, I have to practice that. I think just stopping at the commas, taking a little breath, and I'll try that. Yeah.
And every breath in, allow that breath to be a rejuvenation. Like, think of that breath as a rest and recharge. Every time you breathe in, let that in-breath relax you. So you're settling into your voice more and more. We don't want to push out when we speak. We don't want all of our energy to be out because then we get really shouty.
Yeah.
You want your breath to come all the way in to relax the body. Your voice is still traveling all the way out. It's still loud, but it's coming from a relaxed place.
Yeah.
It's not from this pushing kind of, know what I mean?
And your listeners will pick up on that too.
And they'll start to get anxious. They'll be like, when is he going to finish? Because I feel tense.
That's worth the price of admission right there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, David.
I'm going to listen to the replay.
Oh, yeah, please do.
Yeah.
So the replay will be up on YouTube. And the live is on the Facebook group, but often that will kind of, as more posts come up, it'll disappear down into the discussion. So the replay will be up on YouTube, and I will send a link out.
Okay,
anyone who's registered for this will get the link for the replay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks so much, David. Steve, are you ready? Have you decided what you're going to talk about?
Yeah, I think so. I'm going to try to answer one of the most fundamental questions telling me about yourself that comes about in interview situations. And as I said earlier, I'm trying to develop a very compact elevator pitch, but this is going to be an expanded version. Yeah. And it should be one of the easiest things to answer. Tell me about yourself, but it's really a challenge for me. And what I'm looking for is this ability to seem genuine and authentic, all these wonderful words. And what I come across vocal variety is limited on me, this monotone voice and a sense of tenseness as well. That's always been my something that I think you've observed before. So it really detracts from this sense of really, this is what I'm about, kind of what I'm trying to convey, and pauses as well. And this is really very much a rough cut. I'll probably go through this again in a future session. So this is totally unrehearsed, but it should be should be one of the easiest questions to answer, and yet I find it extremely frightening, quite frankly. But since I've got I think, a very forgiving audience right now, I'll give it a try. Yeah.
This is the dreaded interview question. No one likes answering this question.
No, and it's usually 1 minute is 2 minutes, I believe, is kind of the time frame for that. So this is, and what I'd like to do is at some point boil it down to that. This is kind of an expanded everything type of, like 5 minutes, I guess, is what you're allocating here. Is that right? Yeah.
I'll stop you at 5. If you go to 5, I'll stop you.
Okay.
So are you kind of just a 10 for feedback? You're looking for, or do you want feedback on something in particular?
What I want feedback on is just my stage presence and the fact that what I do is what I say convey sincerity, convey something that I really feel motivated about, feel passionate about, feel like are these just words of trying to explain myself, or is this something that's coming from within? I don't know. There's all sorts of signals that perhaps someone else can pick up on. So again, it's this whole area of not looking tense, being open, not looking small, and those are always my shortcomings in trying to do this.
Awesome. So I love that you're so aware already. You know what you want. You know what your shortcomings are. So I'm going to mute myself. You're going to have 5 minutes to speak.
Okay. I'm going to shut my camera off. I'm going to stand up here in a moment. And
sure. No problem. This is going to shut I'm just going to go to gallery view. Otherwise, we're just looking at nothing while Steve adjusts his camera. His framing was very good when he was sitting. So let's see what his framing is like when he stands up. Probably also pretty good.
Let's see.
Yeah, not bad. Always, I mean, I know this is an impromptu situation. If you were doing this as an interview, if this was a formal interview, I would encourage you to get your camera a little bit higher so we're not looking up at you. And don't do it now. Don't worry about it now. And also just to light your face. Oh, he's gone. Light your face a little bit more. Because there's light right in front of the computer, but when you stand further back, there's not as much light. So.
Okay.
So don't worry about it for now, but that's
okay. Yeah, let me just try to get the message across.
Yeah, exactly. That's what we're working on for now. We're working on charisma. So
I want you to see my full body gestures as well at some point, if you could.
Yes, yeah. As much of your body as I can see, the better. Excellent.
Okay.
Are you ready, Steve?
Okay. Well, it probably started back in grade school during the space age when I was so captivated by the American space program and trying to land a man on the moon that I was so enraptured by physics and mathematics that it really caught my attention. And in high school, totally consumed by becoming just fascinated with physics. I spent a lot of time doing that. And when I went into college, my major was indeed physics and mathematics, and I was totally captivated by the fact, certainly in the area of physics, to be able to predict motions, of being able to, using equations, to be able to send spacecrafts and understand and predict eclipses of the sun and the moon and planetary motions and all of that sort of thing. And at that time, nuclear energy was really making its headway as well. And so my real ambition was to be out into the most esoteric areas of nuclear physics, of plasma physics and neutrinos and quarks, and using all sorts of things. And I want to become a research physicist. I had a thesis advisor, an undergraduate thesis advisor, who said, Steve, that's wonderful. And if you're really a dyed-in-the-wool physicist, that's fine. But you might want to think about where the occupations are and think about perhaps something in geophysics or in biophysics. And I had taken some geology courses as well as some biology courses. And for some reason, I was drawn a little bit more to geophysics. So I went on to graduate school at the University of British Columbia in geophysics and did a thesis project offshore Vancouver Island in marine geophysics, which was well suited for what the oil industry needed at the time. So I hired on as a geophysicist with an oil company, initially out of Denver and then Dallas. And over the course of my career, I was able to take up assignments in the Middle East as well as in Southeast Asia. And it really opened my eyes to sort of the international aspect, which furthermore energized me to do something in the international realm. The oil and gas industry has its ups and downs, and it's all dependent on oil prices. And back in the year 2000, in the late 90s, oil prices were fluctuating a lot. And I happened to come upon a book. I was thinking, really, what do I want to do long term? And at that point in time, in the late 90s, there was a book called The World in 2020 by Hamish McRae. And it really caught my attention because it talked about what the world was going to need in the year 2020, of all long ways off. Water was one of them. And it was so at that point, and it was shortly after that, that a downturn in the oil industry caused a lot of mergers and consolidations. And I decided to exit the company I was with. And at that point, in the year 2000, I would say that I took on my whole pathway was a dual one in sort of this geophysics world, this technical world, and the other was much more on this area of development, international development, water, energy, humanitarian needs, food supply, and all of that. And over the next 20 years, pursued sort of a dual path. And I took up academic work. I had done a master's degree in geophysics and also one in engineering, but I decided to do one in international business. I did an MBA there, and then took the radical step of leaving the company and going to a university at the University of Dundee in Scotland, energy law and policy, and looking at energy development, gas and power, electricity in Brazil at the university there. And then a few years later, I was on a consulting position back in the oil industry, but working in India. And water really, once again, really energized me of something I wanted to do. So over the next 10 years, took on a PhD program at the University of Dundee in water law and policy, and looking at how water could be provided for deprived communities, particularly in India, using private sector business drivers for doing that. And in recent years, I've departed more and more from the pure technical field into more the humanitarian area of using water development. And I've been applying my geophysical skills, rather than looking for oil, looking for water, and drilling wells in Southern Africa and Zimbabwe, and one in Kenya most recently. And what I've trying to do right at the moment, what I feel driven to do, is converge a number of these background skills and experiences into something that I would call corporate sustainability, something that I think is becoming much more drawing the attention of investors as well as companies, including the oil and gas industry, have been notorious for sort of being not the best corporate citizens when it comes to the environment, but they too are getting on board with this whole area of sustainability, particularly in water and food supply, and becoming much more attentive to needs in local communities where they work. The oil and gas industry is extremely international, working in West Africa, Southeast Asia, and various other parts of the world. So they're much more attentive to this. So what I'm trying to do is bring together my technical background. I feel very comfortable with that, bringing together my degree in my work in business, in the business world, as well as the legal and regulatory aspects of it, as well as just the overall need to engage partnerships, collaboration with nonprofit organizations, humanitarian organizations, and bring that to bear on a role that furthers sustainability, furthers humanitarian needs, and yet serves business purposes as well. So this dual purpose, being able to bring those elements together and bring to bear those skills, backgrounds, and so forth, is really my aspiration. That's something I'm hoping to move forward on, and I look forward to opportunities in that way. Thank you.
Love it. Well done. How did that feel, Steve?
Oh, as I expected, it wasn't the most. In the course of that, I'm sure I came across as a bit tense because it was a matter of not having it rehearsed and not knowing what bits and pieces to draw out. There's any one of those elements. The experience of going back to university there could have been a story associated with that. The feelings of what it was like with the oil and gas industry cratering and people being laid off. That could have been a story in itself. What it was like to visit some of these sites in some of these visits in Africa and seeing wells drilled and what kind of a huge impact. So this what I guess is
editing while you're speaking, were you?
Excuse me?
Sorry, were you kind of editing while you were speaking?
Of course, yes. And so yes, absolutely. So there's all sorts of potential tangents to go. And so a unified message that people could follow in a relaxed, open way is quite a bit of work there yet to do on that. And that's what I'm trying to do, is boil it down to something that's coherent, touches on these various facets. Yes, I get it. When somebody listens to me, yes, I get it. I know what you're after. I know what you want, and what you're relating to me supports what you're saying. And it's still rather fragmented. Is my feeling.
Yeah, and that's why we prepare. That is the important part of preparation. It's not even so much rehearsal preparation. It's the editing part. It's what am I saying? Why am I saying it? When we have all this. You have so much interesting information and such a small amount of time to share it in. So there's a lot of choosing that has to happen. And it's impossible to be present with your audience and sharing a story and editing and kind of choosing at the same time. You can't do them both. You gotta, you can't act and direct at the same time. You gotta do one and then the other. You can do them both, but not at the same time. So that's what the preparation is for making those decisions. So this was the first draft. Fantastic. Now you're aware of all the tangents you want to go on.
Yes.
And so this is part of the process is going, you almost kind of want to lay it out and go, because this could be, yes, this is a who are you question in an interview, but this could also be, your introduction when you give a talk, who am I? So you can pick and choose. You can create this, what you could do and what I would do, because your story is so interesting. What I would do if I was you is I would create a map of all the different stories, like you were saying, there's a story related to cratering. There's a story related to the communities that you're helping in Southern Africa. There's stories there. Make a map of all the stories. You're not going to use them all every time, but then you can go, for this audience,
yes,
care most about this story. And so you can, once you've you almost modularize it and create these little packets of information. And then before you get up to speak, you go, I'm going to do this one and this one and this one. I'm going to leave all the others out because you can't. You've got an extremely long resume. It's impossible for you to share everything. Again, that is what your resume is for. So that's not the job of the About Me speech. It's not to say your entire resume. What do you want to highlight? So if you have your entire resume in front of you, what are the 3 most important things you want them to know? I loved the beginning. I love the idea that you're going back to this childhood wonder. I think that's fantastic. I wouldn't start with, well, it all began, because then it sounds like this is going to be a long story.
I see. Okay. Yeah. I see.
The moment you were, well, I suppose it starts way back when I was a young child. I'm like, oh, all right, strap in. This is going to be the whole life story. So I wouldn't start it that way. I would say, but do start with that information, just not with those words. So maybe something like, I've always been fascinated by physics. I remember when the space age was the thing. I was at school, this was happening. So you jump straight into the story. You don't need to introduce it. And you also don't make it sound like I'm going to tell you a linear story from when I was a child, because that could be intimidating.
Right.
So but I did love that story. And what I noticed is, as you spoke, yes, you still have some tension in you. We're definitely going to be working on that in Practice Lab. I'm not going to put you too much out of your comfort zone here in public, but come to Practice Lab and I will. But so we need to get some of the looseness in your shoulders. We need to get some looseness in your shoulders. But the other thing was, I noticed you started with your arms by your side. And then as you got more comfortable, you started using gestures. And your gestures can really bring things to life. What is challenging is if we start without gestures, bringing them in later can be a bit tricky. You actually did manage. It was lovely. But what if you'd started with that energy? What if you'd started with, it was the space age, and I was so many years old, and this was happening, and then you're setting the precedent of, this is my space. And so now I don't have to put my arms up if I don't want to, but I'm occupying that space now. So if we start with a larger gesture, it loosens up your body, and it brings some energy into those first few words, but also it gives you permission to use that space because you've already used it. Whereas if you start, when I was young, I was really interested in space, and then, and then this happened, and then that happened, and you still feel like, I don't have permission to take up the entire space because I haven't done it before. But if you start with something bigger, you don't have to stay big. You can go smaller again and bigger again and smaller again as the story requires. But it gives you permission, and it allows your energy to fill that space, even if your arms aren't. So that would be something, and that's for everybody. Starting with a larger gesture is just going to help you in so many ways. And it loosens you up a little bit more because it's a little bit fun, it's a little bit risque, doing something a bit bigger. But it'll bring the energy in, it'll bring some fun in it for you. And there is that kind of, I've done something a little bit bigger than usual. And that can feed your energy as well. So I would really recommend for you, especially on a kind of, who am I, where you want to engage with your passion. Start with something a little passionate, a little grandiose, When I was a kid, I wanted to go to the moon, or whatever.
I did, actually.
Yeah, so perfect. I think it's beautiful, and I think it's something that a lot of scientists can relate to. That wonder that got you into it in the first place. And it may not continue into the corporate boardroom, but what if it could? Wouldn't that be great? So yeah. I think that's lovely. What else have I got here? Shoulders, yes. Oh, yeah. So the way you present your information as well, again, because this is the first time you're doing it and you're thinking, you're kind of going over your life. So it becomes that, and then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this. And that's not the most dynamic way of telling a story. And then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. So instead, jumping into either an image or a meaningful observation, and then hanging the information off of that. So you start with something more storytelling like an image or an emotion or a really deep observation that you had, and then you just kind of hang the information of, it was at this university, you hang that off of the story. So for example, no, I've got nothing. You started doing more with water and away from the oil and gas industry. Instead of saying, I was working in the oil and gas industry, and then I got kind of bored, and so I wanted to look into water. You could say, the cause that really came to my attention is the severe droughts that are happening in Southern Africa. And I got the opportunity to go and interact with these people and see these wells that were puddles of mud, and it ignited in me this need to go and do this degree, or so it's just kind of, instead of and then I did this, and then I did this, and then I did this, bringing in some imagery or bringing in some emotions, bringing in your passion. It's kind of almost passion first. So instead of degree first, passion first. And then we say, and so that was my impetus to do this degree. And I learned this and that, and then I ended up doing this. And so we're instead of hanging the stories off of the information and using the information as your structure and hanging the stories off of the information, instead use the stories as your structure and hang the information off of the stories. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I like that. That's very. And by story, it can be maybe just a sentence or so. It's not really a story. It's really like a launch point.
Element is a better
What is it?
story. More story elements.
Yes.
It's not actually a story. It's an image or a feeling,
Right.
or
Uh-huh.
Yeah, not like a whole narrative.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
story elements. Yeah. And then the last thing I wanted to say is, because you have so much information that you're sharing in quite a packed amount of time, when there's something that you really want to highlight, you want to, for example, you said corporate sustainability, and that was kind of a watchword that you said you were paying attention to. And so for those words, we want to kind of put them in a neon sign. This is like underlined, bold. This is what I want you to pay attention to. So when I'm speaking, I will, on the corporate sustainability, just pay a little bit more attention to it. So articulate it a little bit better. Slow down a tiny bit more. Maybe increase your volume a tiny, maybe take a breath before you say it so you have new energy for that phrase. So for example, if you're saying, and I did all of these things and they led me to this idea of corporate sustainability, and then blah, blah, blah. Now I'm overdoing it to show you.
Yeah.
Don't sound like a voiceover came in and did it. But just so that you don't drive by it. I was doing all these things and it came to the idea of corporate sustainability, and then I did, but you want to just linger on it just a moment longer, articulate it just a little bit, hit it a little bit harder, so that we know that those are the important words. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah. This whole word of corporate sustainability may resonate with companies and the private sector. For some audiences, it may actually be objectionable to hear about that. So I think that, there are groups out there that consider the corporations to be the problem in the world today, that they're greedy and exploiting things. And yeah, what you're saying about corporate sustainability is almost like an oxymoron, that no such thing happens. And I think it goes back to what you're saying originally. And I like what you're talking about, this story map, so to speak, because depending on the audience, what I'm trying to make a pitch toward is towards companies, is what my deal is all about. But speaking to an academic community, it might be a little bit more on the academic principles of policy and law and or even the business principles that one might, markets and that type of thing. Yeah. And maybe a nonprofit organization would be interested in what you're doing to improve the well-being of rural communities and women and employment and human rights and all those types of things. So there's elements of all of that.
Yeah. So I know this idea that, you're always going to do a slightly different talk. There are people who say, you have one talk and you perfect that talk and you do it everywhere. I think you should have one speciality, sure, but doing the same talk over and over, it becomes very generic. I don't care who you are, this is what I give, Whereas what I found really works for me is I have my speciality, of course. I have a master talk that I've created, which is maybe 2.5 hours long, with everything that I would like to say. I usually only get to speak for 30 to 45 minutes. And so I get to look at that master of everything that I'd like to say. And I go, okay, this audience wants these pieces. And this audience wants these pieces. So I'm still pulling from the same talk. I'm not creating a new talk every time. My introduction's always the same. There's things that are always, the structure is there, but some of my information, the stories that I share or the instructive pieces that I share, if I'm speaking to an audience that is primarily English second language, I'm going to focus more on articulation and language styles than I am if I'm talking to a more spiritual audience. I'm going to talk more about authenticity and how to really connect to yourself and your audience, depending on who I'm talking to. So, they're all true. They're all me. They're all part of my speciality. I don't have time to do a 2.5 hour talk. No one wants to hire me for that, unfortunately. So It's usually an hour. So so you get to pick and choose, but it's still kind of one cohesive oeuvre, you know, but you're just taking you're focusing through a different lens every time. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does, and that's what I'm trying to achieve with this multiplicity of content as well. Being able to be aware of it, and certainly for an international audience where English may not be the first language, using simple words, not using words that are known in a business community or something like that. Being able to adapt the vocabulary and the choice of words appropriately is going to be an important challenge as well.
And slowing down and over articulating for ESL speakers is always helpful.
Yeah, I was going to ask you how much stories are important, and one thing I heard Toastmasters keynote speaker talking about what a story is. It's basically, something's normal, then something happens, and then there's a new normal. So in other words, there's a conflict involved, some tension, and it gets resolved. So a full-blown story that creates a set of actors that are going through, there's something happening, and boom, and then things are resolved. I mean, those kind of stories, I could insert stories like that into what I was trying to describe there. I mean, there was
that'll take
moments in yeah. So I guess, do you use it as an opening generally, as a story, or do you?
So if we're talking about story, because what you're talking about now is story structure, and I often talk about the elements of storytelling, like tension or atmosphere or character, and you can use an element of storytelling without a story. You can. For example, one of my favorite clients, she spoke about sustainability and recycling in the workspace, and she was saying, Leah, if you're watching, I'm quoting you. Her talk, she was talking about how nature doesn't have waste. You don't have a tree that's standing there and going, oh man, look at all these leaves. How am I going to clean these up? She's not telling a story. She's making a point, but she's using the element of character to give the tree a voice.
Okay.
And she's not telling a story. She's not going, and then this happened, and then this changed the hero's journey and all that. She's making a very, precise statement of the fact that nature doesn't have waste because everything gets recycled. But then she brings in the character of the tree that's going, oh man, look at all these leaves that have fallen, and what am I going to do with all this waste? Who's going to come clean it up? It's just an element of storytelling. It's not a whole story.
Yeah.
Leah Elliott has a book, Work Like Nature. Read it. It's fantastic. Just since I was quoting her. But so if you were to use an actual story, like your story structure, that I would use either in your introduction story, like this is who I am, but ideally you use it over the entire talk. So you have the beginning of the story at the beginning, or even the end of the story at the beginning, if you want to get really fancy, or the middle. Start in the middle, and then you wrap it up at the end. So TED Talks do this all the time. This happened, I was walking in this place and I saw this thing, and then they go off on this tangent. They talk about some science stuff, and then at the end they go, and when I was on that hill looking at those people, this occurred to me, and that's brings us round to the story. So you can use it as an overarching structure for your talk if you have a story that fits.
Yeah, and for me, it is in a way a story, this journey from being this super narrow technical person to being enlightened a little bit, and then the struggles of moving into that realm, a journey that's not finished yet. I'm still struggling with it. So
and you can say that, in the beginning when you're talking about the choosing geophysics.
Yeah, something a little bit more applied. Yes.
Because your dreams weren't kind of marketable. I've been there. I trained as an actor. I get it. Choosing geophysics instead, and you could talk about, you could put a seed there about how, maybe it wasn't exactly on course for you, or it took me away from the stars, or I don't know, something. And then at the end, you could say something like, and while I did take this detour into this very marketable industry and I learned a lot, I am finally now able to apply my expertise to something that I'm passionate about, and then like bring it, you know,
Okay.
something at the beginning and you bring it at the end. You could absolutely
that could be woven into a story like that with a little mini plots in there of these little conflict areas along the way. Anyway, that's what I would like to be able to do in a compact and persuasive and well presented way. But it's going to take a lot of work and also again being attuned to the audience as well, not just one little spiel that I would give to everybody. So anyway, this was just thanks for your feedback. Again, the notes I took here was start with a larger gesture, and then the launch point for some of the other things I want to get across, the image or meaningful information or feeling, and then certain key words that, if that's my main message, to articulate those clearly, put emphasis on them, and so forth. So
So my advice moving forward, and this is good advice for anyone who's creating a talk, especially a talk that they're going to be adapting, is do a little mind map of all the ideas, all the places you want to visit. Like I did my degree here, and I got this experience here. You know, do a little mind map of that. Once you've got it written down, there's always, you're like, oh, these two could actually be one point, and I could save time by merging these two ideas. So that's part of it. That's part of the editing process. And then the other thing is, I would color code it. You know, color code the ideas or color code the points for different audiences, for different through lines, so that when you're composing a talk, even if it's a 2-minute talk of who am I, you need one through line. You need one central idea that everything else serves. So when you're editing, that's how you edit. You go, what is my one through line? And you're only allowed one. You're not allowed to be, well, I'm like this and I'm like this. No, one through line. I'm all about corporate sustainability. So anything that you say has to support that one through line. And if it doesn't, it gets cut. And then that makes editing really easy.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I like that. I know you've talked about mind maps before, but I've never actually done it in this way. That's where I've got more motivation to do it now, quite frankly. And you know, in terms of really being able to, again, it's useful for tailoring it to the audience as well. Again, talking to a corporate audience versus an NGO audience versus like I said, an academic type of audience, a conference type of university sort of a setting type of thing. So one can pull that through, but the through line part, I like that as well.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Steve. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
I just love how all of these concepts are so scalable. You know, we're talking about doing a 2 minutes who am I in an interview, but the process for helping you figure that out is the same as the process for figuring out a 1 hour talk or a 3-day workshop. You know, it's always the same process. And these are transferable skills that you can use to make a YouTube video. You can use them to do a LinkedIn video about yourself. You can use them to do an interview when you're saying hello to someone. You can use it to do a talk at a geophysics conference. It's always the same concepts. It's just about how much you scale it, how much you use it. So that was very interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for that feedback. It's something that lot to I think I've absorbed it. It's putting it into practice is going to be another matter. To say nothing of the body language to convey it as well. So that's another element to it as well. And you've touched on that, the shoulder tension and all that. I realize that. So anyway, thanks.
Looseness in your shoulders. So it looks like we're going to just do a lovely small open house today. And I'm not going to worry about it because this is my first one in more than a year. So I'm so grateful that you came out, and I'm so grateful to everyone who's watching this on Facebook right now, and anyone who's watching the replay. Thank you so much. Even maybe next time you'll come and join us and speak. But we're going to call it because this has been super fun, and I think you've got quite a lot of instruction out of it. You've got a lot of next steps. So I'm going to say thank you all so much. I'm going to go around the group one last time and ask you one last question. But before I do that, I do just want to say, for anyone who is watching this on Facebook or anyone who is watching the replay, I do offer speaking training for individuals who do things like TED Talks, but also I have this wonderful online portal which has all of my exercises that I've ever created. They're all in one place. It's a low fee of $37 Canadian per month, and you get regular labs, which are like this but deeper and in a safe space because they're not open to the public. And just yeah, they're super fun. You get access to me. You get special discounted prices. Anytime I do a mini workshop or something that I'm experimenting on, you get to do it for free as a lab member. So if you want to check out the portal, I said the lab member, portal labs, all the same thing. If you want to check it out, please do. Wambui is going to throw that link in the chat. Steve and David are already part of my portal, so they don't have to worry about it. But yeah, it's great fun. So do check it out. And we're going to just go around one last time. I'm going to go to gallery view, and I'm going to ask you each just one thing. What was your favorite thing? Your favorite thing about today's session? It doesn't need to be about your coaching. It could be about anything. And we're going to go David first. Can you unmute yourself and tell us what your favorite thing about today's open house was?
Okay. This is so much fun. I just really, the one thing that this is all about, is to work on your stuff, to work on how you're going to sound and how you can say it. And that's the foundation for your whole message. Because if you can't say it right, if you can't connect with voice to your audience, you're pretty much sunk, I think. You're not going to get it across the way you want. And so this is really important. So I wish I'd known you back in 2016 before I did my TED Talk.
Right? If only we had a time machine.
It would have been so much better. But yeah.
You can always do another one.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe I think you have to be invited, but who knows? I get the book out. They'll say, "Hey, we got to talk about that." That's what the book is about. I want something to talk about so I can show something. Mm-hmm. It's a business card.
Very expensive business card. Excellent. Thank you so much, David. Steve,
Thank
do
you.
you mind unmuting yourself and tell us what was your favorite part of today?
I think the fact that it's really a safe place to be able to do these other things that really make, I think the word that you've sometimes used in the past is to be vulnerable and be able to actually, it's for someone reserved like myself, it's a little difficult to do. The other is just the feedback that you provide. It's not just glossing over everything and just saying you did a wonderful job and good job type of thing, but actually providing some critical and constructive feedback. I think that's the part that we need. It's not always the most comfortable thing to hear that you're doing certain things, but that's what this is all about. And like I said, a safe space to actually do it. Appreciate that.
Oh, thank you so much. I do my best to make it constructive criticism because, I'm very aware that it takes a lot of courage to speak, in front of anybody. And I don't ever want to be like, I am very detail oriented. I get very hyper fixated because I have so much fun with this stuff. I have to make sure that everyone knows, I do really appreciate the courage and putting yourself out there in the first place. It's so wonderful to hear your stories. And I just want to make sure that you're sharing them in the best way you can. Really, that's all. That's my job, is to make sure you're showing yourself in your best light because you are so interesting, and I want everyone to hear about it.
You're a great resource, Danielle.
Yes.
I think a guy like Cameron, when next does a movie, you should hire you just to help with the cast or something. You're worth that kind of value, I think.
And I'm going to put you on the spot, Wambui, and I'm going to ask you. You don't have to come on camera, but can you tell us something you enjoyed from today? This was your first open house. Have you fallen asleep? Are you there?
No, sorry, I had to unmute also my laptop. So yeah, this is my first open house and I have really enjoyed it. The content, the various speakers. So it has been really informative. I think the biggest takeaway, being a university student and, hoping to merge out into starting a business and doing speaking gigs later on in life is to breathe and take your time and, utilizing the concept of storytelling, not without actually having to tell a story. So, I mean, it's been really enjoyable. I have loved listening to Imran. I have taken a few notes down. So yeah, I love it, and I hope we'll be having so many more. Maybe it will be a monthly thing. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yes. My goal is at some point to be doing this every month, but for now, the kind of midterm goal is every quarter. So it's trying to do it every 3 months, and then we'll move towards every month, hopefully. But again, practice labs are happening at least once a month. I think I've got about 2 a month at the moment to practice labs. So anyone who's in the portal, you've got lots of chance to practice. I'm going to love you all and leave you. Thank you so much today. I really appreciate you coming out and, sandboxing with me. It's so much fun. I get so much out of this. I feel re-energized, and it's been a long time since I've been out and about in the internet world. So thank you so much for coming out. We will be doing another one of these soon. If anyone watching wants to get in contact with me, the website is theinspiredspeaker.com. I'll put a little thing on the replay. And if you want a vocal needs assessment, I do those complimentary. We can just get together and talk about your vocal challenges and your goals and where you're going. Thank you all so much. I'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.